programming table storage. So for this I'll create a new project. I'll have to repeat the same action, add the reference to the storage account, get the connection string, and then use this in the code. So I take the previous project, I'll just comment this off. Program for table storage. So here now the initial code will be same to get the reference to the storage account. Will have the same code, but then we will have now cloud table client, and that gives me storage.table. Now once we get the table client, what we want to do, remember a table storage is a collection of entities. Each entity is a collection of properties. Each property is a key value pair. It is like that. So I have table. Under table we will have entity, and under table and under entity we have a property, and property is what is key value pair. Now what is important is, in one table I can have entities which are having different properties. That means different key value pairs. That is the speciality of the table storage. Unlike SQL Server table, where every row has fixed number of columns, here it is not like that. Here for every entity we are going to have different set of properties, and this property names also can be different in the same table storage. Now I'll show you one practical example where we have used table storage. Let us say we have got categories. Now under categories we will have different values. There can be one category of products, let's call it as pets. Then there is something called as furniture. Then there can be, let's say, electronics, and so on. These are different categories. Now what my requirement is, I need to manage products for all these categories. Now the fields which I am going to identify a pet with, and the fields which are required for furniture, and the fields which are required for electronics are completely different. They cannot be same. So what I'll do is I'll create a table called as product. I'm talking about a storage table called as product, and in the same product I'm going to have a pet object, maybe more than one in number, pet 1, pet 2, pet 3. So pets will have one set of properties, like a pet can have breed, what is the date of birth, there can be color, there can be so many other properties which are related to a pet, type of pet, whether it is dog or cat, like that many things can be here. Similarly, why it is opening? Similarly, I can have under same products only furniture. So that means it can be a chair, sofa, or dining table, or some table. It can be anything. Now the properties which are there for this and the properties which are there for this, are they same? No, obviously they will be different. But I want all of them to be stored under a common entity collection called as products. So that common operation on products can be performed over there. So this is a practical scenario where we can make use of a table storage, table client. So I create a table client. After that, basic, we have to create a table and we'll have to insert data into that table. Now, point is, if I want to insert data into the table, I have to actually insert entities. To represent those entities, we will need the classes in .NET. That means in C#, I have to write a class now called as employee. And what is that I need in employee? Now, employee would have name, or I'll copy from here and explain it to you. An employee will have name, department, email ID, phone number, and so on. But in case of the table entities, remember there will be two fields which will be there for every entity. One is called as the partition key and the other is called as the row key. The combination of this partition key and row key is supposed to be unique. I cannot have two entities which has the same value for partition key and row key. But yes, under one partition key, there can be multiple row keys. That possibility is there. And same row key can be used in different partition. And one partition can have multiple row keys. So basically between partition key, row key, it's a many to many, but together they are primary. They together supposed to be unique. So what I'm assuming is when the employee object is created, the department name I'm going to store it as partition key. Now partition key always should be chosen on the basis of related entities together. All the entities which are related in somehow or the other, I would put their partition key as same. So in my example, if I take you to, I'll put pet. Imagine the pet can be dog, the pet can be cat, the pet can be maybe the parrot, the pet can be fish. All these are animals, but I would have one partition key called as animals, and I'll put that as a partition key. I'll have a separate partition key called as furniture, and under that I will put these as different entities. So like that we have to do segregation. Not necessary, you can build up your own criteria, but general practice followed is all those entities on which operations will be performed together, we should have same partition key. I'll explain it with code little more. But why are we getting error here? Because this partition key and row key are there in the parent entity, table entity, I think table entity or entity, table entity. Table entity is in the namespace built in, that is table. So table entity has these two properties, partition key and row key. So now I have only created these entity objects, but did I persist them? No, they are just object created. Here the partition key is training and here the partition key is development. So employee 1 is there in training and employee 1 is also there in development. It is like that. And there are different values I have given for email ID and phone number. How to add them? For adding them, we have to first create a table batch operation. And all those entities which have same partition key should belong to one batch operation. So here I am put only employee 1, employee 2. I will not put employee 3. And if I try to put employee 3, I am going to get an error. This whole thing is going to be treated as one single transaction. Remember that. So either all will insert or none will insert. It will be like that state. And where will all these execute? Insert or replace doesn't immediately replace. This particular method is important. Execute batch. So all the batch operations will be executed at one go. But till that time, they are only there in the memory in client application. So now I run this program. I have to change the startup. And it will fail there. All entities in a given match must be same partition key. It could not. So we comment it. So table was already created. It was not there, but it got created now. And all these things I can look at from the Server Explorer. Azure. You should be logged in. Storage. My storage account is not there here. So right click here and attach external storage. So how to attach? Now we need the account name, DSS, demo storage, and then we will need the key also, access key. Copy this value and put it here. Use HTTPS, which is recommended but not necessary. It's your choice. Now click on OK and you get it here. Expand tables. We should see employee in this particular table. Right click, view table. It's empty. Right now I did not execute. Nothing is there. So now I go back to Studio program and run this. It will successfully execute and the result of execution would be here. Refresh and we can see two entities. Both of them will have partition key, row key, and of course there is also timestamp. Timestamp is the last operation when was it performed on that particular entity. Email, phone number. So not necessary this development has same properties. Maybe I can write here, let's say specialization, and give an extra property. Maybe medical domain. But this specialization should now be a property in the class. Oh. So now how to execute this? This is already completed. We can comment it off. How to execute the data for third? We'll have to create one more table batch operation. We'll need this also. Table client has given us the table reference, and on that table reference we have to execute batch. And in between I would add the third employee. If you want, you can have multiple objects of this also. Nobody would stop you. Now if I run this program, on successful completion, when I come back here and refresh, I'll see one extra column for the development, which is not there for the other two. So two more columns I'll add here. Partition key, and row key. So I repeat, we have got table on top. In my case, the name of the table is employee. So under table, we say entities, which are nothing but objects of employee objects. I mean employee class. And every employee class object has what? Properties. So in my case, the properties are these things. So for a given entity, there will be value for these properties. That is what precisely happens. So like this only now we can perform retrieve operations. So when we are trying to retrieve, table operation is the class, ready-made class. What I am trying to retrieve now? Objects of employee based on the combination of this partition key and row key. That's how it works. Based on the combination of partition key and row key, we are going to get the object. So I am saying now, get me all the employees. Basically, it's a table operation only. The table operation is not executed immediately. For the table operation to execute immediately, we have to execute explicitly here. That is going to get me result. Result in our case is employee. Cast it and get the data. So how many entities we are going to get? Because we have given both, retrieve has both development as well as employee. That is implies it has partition as well as row key. Both the keys are there. So obviously we are going to get only one entity here. And that's what is this entity. It did not get anything. Why? Development has employee 1. Employee 3 is not there. So let's change this to 1 and re-execute it. And we should get that employee 3 object. Like that. If in case you want to get multiple entities, a separate method is there for that. You have to say table query and you have to create a condition here. This condition, partition key equal training. You have overloaded versions, and in that case you are going to get multiple entities. So I am saying partition key equals training. Basically we are framing a query. So query is on employee with this filter condition, and that query is executed here. And once the query executed, this time we are going to get multiple entities. So we know that in our case all the entities are of type employee only, hence direct casting. If not, you'll have to check the type of and then do casting. We are printing the data. Only training. Don't give filter. All the 3 we got. So we can give filter in the query, and the query is executed using execute query. So here it is table operation, whereas here it is table query. Remember the difference. Execute query. And in case you want to delete the table, this is the command.
Can we go to the
Also, let me explain you one important thing about e-tag. We are going to have for every entity one more property called as e-tag. Now what exactly is this e-tag all about? Generally, this e-tag is used especially when we are trying to perform operations which are being simultaneously executed by multiple users. Let us say if I have an entity here, entity 1, and another user also has the same entity. And now this entity has property 1 and property 2. And these two properties have values, let us say v1 and v2. Obviously, these two values are going to be there with second user also. Now what can happen is, for in backend, what do we have? The values in backend are still p1 is equal to v1 and p2 is equal to v2. This is the value in the backend. Now if suppose v1 changes the value from this particular user, changes the value. This is on one user machine and this is on another user machine. Two different user machines. Same entity is being viewed at the same time. So first user goes and make changes here and changes this to, let us say, v1.5. Now is this change reflected in the client here? No. Now possibility is that this user will not know that this change was done and he will simply override this value. So we don't want this to happen. That is where this e tag is coming into picture. So whenever we fetch the entity, whatever is the current value of the entity, e tag, let us say, maybe some number, random number, let's say 10 is there right now. That 10 also is going to come here. So e tag now will be equal to 10. This user also will know that e tag is equal to 10. So now for the entity, the three values are same across both the clients. Now first user changes from 1 to 1.5 and then he does a batch update. So here it becomes 1.5. Important is automatically this e tag will get updated. Now it becomes 11 and client also it becomes 11 on refreshing. So any kind of change made to any of the properties of a given entity, immediately the e tag in background will increment. So now what will happen when this user is trying to do an update, execute batch operation, and when this user performs either for update operation or for delete operation, anyone, immediately the API will identify that the e tag is not matching. Because e tag is not matching, a kind of change which is made here will not be updated here and this user is going to get an exception. So e tag is generally used to deal with concurrency issues when the same API, same entities are being used by multiple clients at the same time for update or delete operations. But yes, in many cases we don't care. We don't mind whether e tag is old value or new value. Irrespective of that, it should overwrite and or delete. In such case, simply give e tag as star. But otherwise, whatever e tag we get from backend, that only we should give it to the entity and then we should perform the delete operation or maybe the update operation. In short, e tag is basically used for ensuring that parallel concurrency updates are taken care of. Only one user update will be accepted, the other user updates or deletes will be rejected. So this is all about entities and table API. Basic operations I have shown you, basic CRUD operations, and in context of a particular application, you'll have to learn how to use all this. Thank you.